All right, Liberty Expert Nation, it's Timon here, and I am joined today by Gavin Berkey and Miklos Dosa. I'm probably butchering the names, but welcome, gentlemen, to the Liberty Experts podcast. And you guys might know Miklos from our Libertarian Party Twitter handle. He's been killing it on Twitter lately, by the way. Good job there, Miklos. Make sure you look up the Canadian Libertarian Party Twitter, because I think it's never been on as much fire as it is right now, thanks to Miklos.
Keeping the fuel coming.
Absolutely. Miklos has a vested interest in lifestyle libertarianism, let's call it, where we learn to make ourselves more free despite what the state is doing, and prepare for all the negative unintended consequences, or maybe they're intended consequences of growing government. And so he hooked me up with Gavin, and Gavin is a co-host on what podcast is it? The Patriot?
Canadian Patriot podcast, right. Most regularly there. And then also Canadian Prepper podcast. I kind of help them out from time to time as well. So that ties in nicely to that self-reliant stuff.
Beautiful. Well, and that's what we want to focus more on here on the Liberty Experts. We talk a lot about how terrible government is, and we talk about all the ways that if people would just listen to us and just make us king, things would be so much better. But of course, we can't control other people. We can't control the government. We can't control the external environment, but we can control what we do. And so that's where we want to start focusing, is less about begging for liberty and more about how can we take more responsibility so that we have more personal freedom and more personal liberty right now, here today. And so, Gavin, that's why you and Miklos are on today to talk about your expertise, and that is, I guess, preparing for calamity. It's not hard to see how
a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, give us a rundown. What maybe we'll start with what you think Canadians should be doing to prepare for, let's say, economic collapse. Because look, the Bank of Canada is printing money like never before. Our value, our dollar's value, it's just a matter of time before, a loaf of bread costs us $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Like Zimbabwe or the Weimar Republic or something like that. So
yeah, I don't really feel like taking a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to go pick up a loaf of bread and all of that. And like my father grew up in communist Albania and actually had to escape, and they shot at him. So like I've heard personal stories of like waiting in line for bread and all of the things. And like you see it now during the pandemic, where you go to the grocery store and there's a lineup, or they've got limits on, no more than 2 bags of milk, which like is fine for me because I'm a grown man, so I don't drink milk. I drink alcohol like I should. But like if you have children and all of that, and a bunch of children, maybe 2 bags isn't enough for you. So like you gotta be prepared, and that means like I guess the government says that you should have 72 hours of food or something on hand at any one time, but like 72 hours is not a lot of food. Like if the grocery stores are closed for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is because of man-made or natural disasters, which happen. I mean, you get ice storms and all kinds of crazy stuff, that can do that. That's not going to be enough. How are you going to feed yourself, clothe yourself, the basics that you need: food, water, shelter, right?
Yeah. So the end goal.
Sorry, I was going to say, let's not forget toilet paper, fellas. I mean, I can't imagine anything more important than toilet paper. Last year, grocery shelves were empty of toilet paper. Now, if there's one thing the Canadian public has taught me, it's that the most important thing you can have in your prepping arsenal is a month's or 2 supply of toilet paper.
That is absolutely essential. I mean, you can eat it, you can clothe yourself in it.
Like,
you don't have that.
We found all these starved people, but their assholes were remarkably clean.
Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, I remember going into Walmart, and this was not that long ago. So like between the first and second wave, when things were sort of back to normal, I hate to use that word because it wasn't normal, but closer to normal than it is now or was. And there were still people that were getting like 2 shopping carts full of toilet paper. Like, I mean, obviously you need some, but like you could probably make do without it. Like toilet paper is a relatively modern invention. It's
Yeah.
also produced locally, so like I'm not worried about it. If I need to, I can go in the backyard and grab some leaves or use a dirty sock and then just wash it again. You know, like there's
Yeah.
things. There's more important things like water is the biggest one. You can only go so many days without water.
Right.
So
Yeah.
keep
And,
that
and
on
if you're
hand.
really worried about anal hygiene, you know, I was over in Japan a few years ago doing some filmmaking, and I realized how utterly barbaric we are over here with our, you know, no one washes shit off their hands with a dry piece of paper and calls that good and thinks their hand is clean. So, you know, the Japanese made me realize that our fixation on toilet paper is some kind of cleanliness, hygienic practice is far more barbaric than we thought. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's true. Yeah, those toilets with the little built-in bidets that are like
yeah,
$6,000 for a toilet is ridiculous. But yeah,
every
that's
toilet in
clean.
Japan has those,
Yeah,
man. It's
just
it was
just
amazing.
smearing it across your butt with paper is not clean. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you'll
Okay, so
manage without it. Yeah.
right. So what are your tips and what do you recommend Canadians do if it's not toilet paper? Then what is it? Do we need to have a supply of canned foods? Should we be growing our
Absolutely.
own stuff, or
I mean,
what's
if you can, like, so, I mean, if you live in the city, and I mean, I'm not in the city, just outside the city, so I don't have a whole lot of space, and that's kind of the hard part about the whole thing is making do with what you have, and like it, like everything, it's there's a financial and a time cost to all of this, and like how much time do you have, how much money and resources do you have, and anything is better than nothing. So yeah, like canned food is good because you can get it for relatively cheap. It lasts a while. You can kind of store it in places that you don't need to get to. So I mean, that's a good low cost alternative. But if you can, absolutely grow your own food. Like that is the best way to do it. You know
Yep.
what's going into it. And it doesn't need to be anything super fancy. And like if you start learning how to do canning and preserving, you can do all of that stuff. You just got to watch it because like at the beginning of this whole craziness, like all of the seeds in all of the grocery stores across the country got bought up.
wow?
I have a friend of mine that actually has a fairly large rural property that does do a lot of his own vegetables and stuff like that. And he plants potatoes and stuff like that. And he went to his local seed supply place at the time of year when he needed to do that. And the guy's like, "Yeah, we're all sold out, man. Like there's no seeds left because everyone just panicked and was like, better plant them now," kind of like they did like in Chaz when that whole thing was happening. And they were
Right,
just
right.
like, and you're like,
Well, yeah. So they had us all distracted with toilet paper while all the smart people were buying up seeds.
but even then, I mean, they're if you're thinking of doing this, start preparing for it. I mean, it's already too late almost now at this point in the year, but like plan ahead. And that's the biggest important thing is planning ahead so that you have the resources in your stockpile or whatever you want to call it, so that when you get to the time to plant or do whatever, you already have them and you're not like, well, it's time to plant in 2 days, so I better go buy some seeds today. If you don't have them now, you won't have them in 2 days, and like there's time to it. So yeah, like definitely if you can grow your own. If you need to use canned food, you can do that. There's some great like those emergency buckets of dehydrated meals that like taste like garbage, but whatever, like it's food. You can survive on it.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
about to say if you have the ability to get a freeze dryer or if you understand how to do the process yourself, definitely do that because that'll keep for 25 years if you store it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Well,
yeah, like
and Gavin, you kind of hit on something that I think is important too. Like a lot of people, it seems like we've just kind of become enculturated to take care of our needs in the moment when we need it. Like we've gotten so used to there being resources just available. Like I need seeds today because I'm going to plant today, so I'm just going to go get the seeds today.
yeah.
While Western civilization was built by people who planned ahead, right? And there are some theories that Northern Europeans, when man first immigrated to northern climates and realized that they had to plan to survive the winter, like they weren't going to be able to just go out and pick fruit off the trees all year round like they were in the tropics. Now we're going to have to plan ahead, and we're going to actually have to think about how are we going to survive the winter. Well, that requires planning you know, and, you know, it's right in the term there, I guess. Prepper is preparation and
being
planning,
prepared,
right? Yeah. So, so it's almost like, Canadians need a bit of a mindset shift. They need to kind of rid themselves of this immediate gratification mindset and start thinking about, how are we going to plan in the future? What are we going to sacrifice right now, today, to plan so that we can survive in the future? And that might require, you know, giving up some leisure time. It might require, you know, putting in a little bit of grunt work right now to you know, build things and plant things and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
It's
I think
exactly how you always say, Tim. Like, we need a cultural shift in Canada to actually accomplish anything, because people are just way too comfortable with all the conveniences.
well, I
Yeah.
don't even think it's just Canada. I think it's the world. I mean, everyone's gotten so used to that. Yeah, like you said, instant gratification. You need anything. Like, I mean, it's amazing. Like, if I need anything, I can go to Amazon, I can place an order, and it shows up at my house the next day, or even sometimes that day. Like, that's incredible. The ability to do that. But you get so used to it, and it's just as that. It's in life as well. Like, I run a distribution company, and people have gotten so used to being able to order from us and have it show up at their place the next day that they don't stock stuff on their shelves anymore. So a customer comes in with a broken item and says, I need this repaired. Guy goes, yeah, not a problem. Like, come back in 2 days. But what happens when, like, I don't have it and I've got to order it, right? Like, we try not to have that, and we plan ahead and we stock, you know, a couple $1 million worth of inventory across the country. But there are times when shit happens. Like, you know, and they're not prepared. We are, but it happens. And now, you know, they can't fix the thing. And sometimes things just take longer. But if you had it on the shelf, you're prepared and you think ahead, then you don't have to rely on that. You know, we've gone from like Reagan saying that like the scariest thing ever is that the government's come and help you, to like Joe Biden that's like, don't worry, we'll look after you. And it's like people that that doesn't make them nervous at all anymore. They're thankful and they're so glad, and they're looking forward to the government doing all of the stuff for them.
Well, they're begging the government to do it for them. I mean, that's part of the problem.
Not that they can, but like it's just,
you know, if that's what every political debate is now, is like, you want people to die if you don't want the government to look after you. It's if you have any little bit of anxiety about anything, any worry about anything, you beg the government to take action to alleviate your anxiety. Primarily, it's become the opiate of the masses.
I mean, everybody wants more freedom. I just don't think that some people understand that with that freedom comes the responsibility and all of that, and just and the consequences of your choices. So they want to do all the stuff and be free and this and that and everything else. But then when they do something stupid or something doesn't work out, they don't want to deal with the negative consequences of that. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. You can either be free and bad things are going to happen, and you have to just deal with that and mitigate that as best that you can and rely on your friends and family and your network to help you in that time. Or you could basically just give up now and just have it all provided for you, which we know can't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So take me, you know, there are more and more people like me, and I'll admit, you know, I've become soft in this modern capitalist world where, you know, it's amazing. It's almost like a Jetsons world and we can get whatever we want. But I also see the big picture. And I think more and more people are seeing that big picture now, and they're becoming red pilled, or whatever you want to call it, awoken to the fact that, look, we can't keep printing all this money. We can't keep, at the same time we're restricting the economy, at the same time we're ruining people's lives. Something has to give, and it's not going to be pretty. And now I'm starting to panic, and I'm starting to predict this is going to happen. But I'm in this mindset of I can order stuff on Amazon. I can do all this stuff. So what are some steps I can start taking right now today, Gavin, that'll now that I'm waking up to this fact, and, you know, many of our audience is like, what can we start to do to prepare? You've talked a little bit about, you know, having a supply of food. Like, how much food do you think we should have tucked away?
I mean, that depends, I guess, on your, you know, your daily calorie intake. If you're one of those people that's got like a fitness regime and you've got to have this or that, you need to calculate that out and figure that all out. But I mean,
this doesn't come with cheap calories, man. You know what I'm saying?
I hear that. I mean, everyone's working on the COVID plus 20. I'm on my COVID minus 20 because I've been eating right and doing all that stuff. But yeah, you got to, like, we, plan ahead, right? You need to know how many liters of water you need and your partner needs, or partners, or your children and dependents and pets and animals, and how much you need for drinking, how much you need for doing dishes and cleaning your clothes, and where you can sacrifice some of that. And it's not easy, but anywhere that you can start is a good start. I mean, the water, I think, is probably the most important one, and that's a very simple one for people to do. Like, not to say that you have to go out and buy cases of water, but like that's a very simple thing to do. It's fairly inexpensive and it lasts a very, very, very long time, especially if it's like sealed properly and all that.
Right.
Same goes with like rice and beans, because you're
Yeah.
getting all of your, I think it's your macronutrients or
Yeah.
something from them.
Well,
And that's just rice and beans, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like, yeah, it's not a luxury thing, but you'll survive on it. And yeah, you get a couple of things of some dry pasta, some canned food and canned vegetables or frozen vegetables. Canned is nice because then you don't have to rely on having power. Like you could eat a canned something even if it's cold, might not
Right.
taste great, but you'll survive. And if you have 2 or 3 weeks worth of water and food, which takes a while to build that up, and I'm not quite there yet myself. Um, and space obviously is a thing, but if you have that, like you're good, right?
Right.
From there you can figure it out, and then you got to build your network. Like everyone's so focused on like the broader global community and how, we've
Right.
got to do all of this because we're all in this together, but they don't even know their neighbor.
Right.
They're so cared about what
Exactly.
other people on the other side of the world think about them and how they're doing. But the people that could actually help them in a time of need right next door, well, if they have a wicked supply of water that you maybe you can say like, okay, you worry about that, I'll worry about something else. And you get, I mean, in the prepper community, they call it mutual assistance groups, or your MAG.
Right.
That like you need to rely on people. Now you can't make that group too big because then you get into that whole like, how do I really trust 45 people or 100 people? Like there's like 10 to 15 people, like when times get tough, that you can really count on and trust. But like find a close-knit group of people and do stuff with them, socially, and to help build each other all up, and start there.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
local
and that,
community is huge.
yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things, one of the positive unintended things that I found, in my, 5 or 6 years as I guess what a politician, if you want to call me that, is that, the first year I got into politics, people had to kind of drag me kicking and screaming. And I didn't see the point of it. I thought it was antithetical, but then I was like, you know what? I heard the message of liberty, and it was like an aha moment for me. It was like angels singing, the light coming on. And it was almost like, was it Paul on the road to Damascus, where he had that aha moment of, recognizing the truth of the gospel or something like that. Right. And I thought, all I need to do is tell people this, and they're going to go like, yeah, have that moment like me. And we're going to get a libertarian government and everything's going to be good. Then I realized what a slog it was, what a grind it is, and how invested people are in their own identity and worldview, and that how they're not maybe wired like me to just kind of follow basic stark logic and accept the consequences of that. And so I became very discouraged, and so I'm fairly pessimistic about the future of Canada under statism. I don't think statism contracts. I think it continues to grow until it collapses. But one of the good things I've seen come out of, speaking across the country and having meetups with people like you and others is that I now have this incredible network. And when I go to places and I see people meet up in a pub or at a venue, quite often there's a network that is left behind in that community of people who are like-minded, who have each other's backs. And that gives me a lot of I guess, encouragement or confidence that whatever comes down the pike, whatever kind of apocalypse we face, these people are going to not just survive, but they might even flourish and be better because of it.
Meek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, your local community is what's going to bring it all together. I mean, and that's the most important thing that you can have around you, and that we've lost that. I mean, like everyone else, I've been guilty of that and still am, and that like I don't know my neighbors particularly well. I mean, I'm friendly with them and wave at them, but like, a couple of them just don't want to have anything to do with me, and not for any reason. That's just because that's the way they are. So I mean, I'm not gonna like
Sure.
force that, because that's, being a
Yeah.
shitty neighbor too, right? But like,
Right.
I started to look at the way that things were going in the country and the world, and like I have all these weird skills because I travel a lot and take weird classes to learn fun things that might be useful in the future at some point. And I started reaching out to groups in my community, and that's how I started like volunteering as a search and rescue technician, right? So
Cool.
I wanted to, to take a page out of Gandhi's book and be the change that I wanted to see in the world. And that was
Mm.
me getting involved in my local community to make it a better place. And if more people did that and grew their local community and their connections within that community, yeah, if something bad happens, we don't need provincial government or federal government to step in and tell us this, that, or whatever. The local community will just do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And quite often, libertarians are kind of introverted and like, just, leave me alone. Like, don't tread on me,
Yeah.
and we'll be good. But, that extra gear of actually getting out there and fostering positive connections with people around you is something that I think we could definitely work on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, plotting and scheming in the back rooms, to silently take over, then leave everybody alone is a
Yeah.
great plan, except yeah, it doesn't
Right.
really
Well, and
work so
usually
good,
it's
right?
not it's not even that. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
arguing about how many angels are on the pin of head of can fit on the head of a needle. Kind of philosophical discussions about esoteric stuff that only like
Yeah.
hardcore liberty nerds care about, kind of thing, right? It's like a book club
Yeah.
essentially. So
Yeah, I've been to a few of the local liberty-minded meetups sometimes. And it's just like, oh man, like, and that's
yeah,
why like at times like I don't even really like referring to myself as libertarian sometimes, because it's just like I
yeah,
don't like to call myself a prepper either, because there's sometimes like a dirty stigma attached to it,
sure,
and it's like, oh, one of those guys, and you're like,
yeah, yeah,
I just like being accountable and being left to my own devices, whether I like sink or swim, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
on my own merits.
It's funny,
Right,
like
right.
when you do encounter that stigma, it's like we were having a normal conversation until I said that one word, and then suddenly you have this preconception of me, and it's
Yep.
like, well, fuck me, because I'm prepared. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've touched on a few things. First, it's this mindset of plan for tomorrow. Second, we need some food, a supply of food and water. It's on the water thing. Is there anything you'd recommend in terms, like I live around a bunch of water. It's just kind of gungy water. Is there water purification things that you would recommend, or? Um,
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the massive Berkey water filters.
okay.
Um, they take out all of the junk in the water, and depending on what filters you get or combination of filters, you can have one that just like removes the basic stuff, or you can get like the dual filter one where it removes all of the fluoride and all of the other stuff that like they use your tax dollars to pump into the water,
Right. Right.
that you maybe don't want. It takes that all out. So like you can get a big one of those at home. So then you could just use, oil drums or water jugs, or, they've got the plastic gas cans, but like for water, you can just
Yeah.
store dirty water in that, or they've got those giant water bladders that you can put in your bathtub for like, uh-oh, the hurricane's hitting tomorrow. I better fill this up to make sure I've got water. However
Cool.
you can store it, but something like that that'll filter all of that, easily. It's just gravity fed. So you just pour, a couple of gallons in the top of the tank and it drains down. And I mean, I've been using that for the last couple of years. And once you make that switch over, man, like other water just does not taste good at
Right.
all.
So Berkey water filter. How do you spell that? Is it BI or
B
B?
Berky.
Okay.
They make a bunch of different ones. They make travel size, like, your Nalgene-ish sized
Yeah.
ones that you can just like on the go, use a water fountain, pour it in, fill it, it filters it for you. But yeah, being able to filter water is key. I mean, you can always just boil it and that'll kill the bacteria, but like you're not going to get out the
gunk.
stuff in there that you maybe don't want, and it's still going
Yeah.
to maybe taste like crap. But
okay, so we've got our food and water looked after. That's awesome. Good tip on the Berkey. Like you say, we got to make community connections, build up a community, because I mean, no man is an island. We're going to rely on each other, have to have each other's back. What else should we be thinking about? You guys are into guns and self-defense. What should we be looking at for defense? Because obviously, if we have all these resources and skills, people are going to be after them if they're feeling the pinch. So how do we defend ourselves?
I mean, in this country, not easily, but if we lived in a real country, yeah, I mean, you don't need to have anything crazy. I mean, if you're just doing this so that you've got something, right, and you don't ever plan to use it, I mean, just a basic pump action shotgun is probably your most versatile thing that you could use for hunting if you need it to hunt. And if on the off chance that like we're truly in the the end times and like you're the one on the block that's prepared and everyone knows it, you could use it to defend yourself fairly well.
Well, I mean, my dad, we grew up on a farm. We'd often have people nefarious intent coming down our driveway in midnight with their lights off, and he would just stand out on the porch with his shotgun, and they would turn around. He never had to use it. It was a deterrent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes presenting yourself as a hard target is a deterrent enough, right? They'll move on to somebody else that's, like cameras and alarms and giant locks and all of that. Like, they're not going to keep people out that really want in, but it'll keep the people that just are looking for an easy target away. And you hopefully you never need it, but if you've got it, at least you've got it. And if you are going to do that, like that, again, like that's a personal choice for people that they need to make. If they're going to make it to carry one, then they need to be ready with the consequences of potentially having to use that, which could be legal, I mean, psychological, and all of those things. You need to, be prepared, and you need to know how to use it, and you need to keep that skill set up, because shooting is a perishable skill. You don't need to be the best, but you need to be good and proficient with it, so that in an emergency, when you start getting into that sort of, elevated heart rate and everything starts to go blurry and you get that sort of conditioned gray, you don't want that, but you want to be able to function, and the gross motor skills need to be there so that you know what you're doing and you can do it safely and you don't injure somebody, or worse, that you're not intending to.
Yeah, safety is number one, especially when it comes to firearms, because it's really just like having a car or a fire extinguisher. It's supposed to do a job, and if you misuse it, you could hurt someone very easily.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Safety is number one for anybody getting into the sport. And then developing those skills is, I'd say, even more important.
Right. Yep. And I noticed, Gavin, you're wearing a hat that says Ragnarok.
Yes, tactical. Yes, that is one of the companies that I work for. We sell first aid supplies. We do first aid training. We do firearms training.
Awesome. And how do people get involved in, is there tactical shooting all over the place? Or
well, there was up until around May 1st, 2020. It still exists. Yeah, there's different types of competitive shooting and things like that. There's several different flavors. Each province has their own rifle association that's part of like the Dominion of Canada Rifle Association, that's like as old as the country and existed to help train the military, and you can become a part of that if and when they allow you to shoot the rifles again, and if and when the military bases open up again to civilians. But there's other things. There's IPSC, which is pistol shooting. There's IDPA. There's 3-gun, which would be like pistol, rifle, shotgun, and a host of other various sporting activities using firearms that are a great way to keep those skills up, learn those skills, get proficient with them, and stress inoculation, right? Because you're doing all this stuff under a time constraint and all of that, which is great. And not just great for this, but just life in general, because the more stuff that you do competitively under stress means that when you're at work and dealing with stress, or personal life and dealing with stress, you've learned to deal with it better because you're putting yourself in those situations. And it's just better all around, not just for firearms, but any competitive stuff is good for you.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, even, I recently took a tactical medic, a workshop, and, the guy had us like, he asked us a question like, how would you do this drug calculation? And I'm like, oh yeah, like this. He's like, now drop down and give me 10, maggot. And as you're doing the push-ups, he's like, tell me that again. How are you going to calculate this? And you're like, oh shit, So the whole course was kind of designed around putting you under stress the whole time and having to make clinical decisions competently. And it was a real eye opener to managing that. That's a skill set in and of itself, just dealing with stress.
Absolutely.
And that kind of leads me, I think, to one of the main things I tell people is really developing, again, mindset training. It's not just like deferral of immediate gratification, but it's managing stress, being able to adapt, improvise, overcome in the moment, cultivating skills that others find valuable, so that even if you don't have any resources, you can trade those skills for resources. Those are all super important things, and those are hard things to do. I mean, you can't just sit on your duff and consume media all day and expect to be a valuable person who's going to be able to flourish and survive a calamity. But anything else we should know about, Gavin? We got about 5 minutes left here before.
No, I would definitely echo that statement. Like your brain is your most important asset, right? Like, so learn stuff. Like, like you all need a break. Like, your mental sanity is super important too. So we all need to like sit on the couch and veg out and watch cartoons or stupid movies that you don't need to think about and are just entertaining. We need that, but don't do that all the time, right? Like, laugh at a couple of cat videos on the internet and then go and learn something new, or read something that's going to make you think and expand your mind. I mean, that's a big thing that we're pushing for on our podcast and in general, just like getting out there, learning something new, and then practicing. Like, don't just read it and then forget about it. Take some time and practice that every now and again, because you got to keep all of those things sharp. Otherwise, they're no good. Like you said, great, you can do your med calculations, but can you do them under stress? Now that you've done it once, well, you got to keep doing it, because then that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, it's like all those things can help you build a mental resilience. So not only will you just do well under stress, but you can, again, flourish. And so, that can be anything like going camping in, the winter. Like you wake up at 3 a.m. and your sleeping bag's frozen around you, but you go home and you think about it and you're like, hey, I survived that,
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Okay. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on the podcast here and sharing some knowledge. Gavin, how can our listeners find out more about you, follow you, and see what you're up to, and learn more about what you're into?
Yeah, I guess you can reach out to me, Gavin, at ragnaroktactical.ca. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, or if you want to just follow me personally, you can also find me on Instagram, Urbex GTA, URBEX GTA, all one word. That's my personal account to see all of my shenanigans and anti-government stances and all the fun stuff that's got me booted off multiple platforms, but I'm back now.
Beautiful. Well, and if you send me the links, I'll put them down in the show notes as well. Miklos, awesome. You're killing it on the Libertarian Twitter handle. You guys got to follow the Libertarian Party on Twitter. What else are you up to? Where can folks follow what you're doing?
Just focusing on the Twitter account mainly. I'm going to be throwing the link up on Twitter later after this goes live. And that's really about it. Awesome. We've got an Instagram, but it's not gaining as much traction just because kids, it's mostly kids that are using Instagram, and they're not politically minded, really. Like my generation's very unaware.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Mine's not better.
Well, at least they could be boomers, right? I mean, let's look at the bright side. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. And look forward to chatting with you again about some more of this stuff. I'm sure,
Anytime.
As we go down this path of more personal responsibility equals more liberty, we'll have a lot of questions for you. So thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.